Hello and welcome to episode 20 of Courtside. I'm your host, Andrew Cohen. Courtside is a podcast dedicated to all things sports. In today's episode, I will talk about NFL referees and James Harden. So sit back, relax, and take a seat. Courtside. So originally I was planning on talking about the NFL refs last week, right after the NFC Championship game and the AFC Championship game, of course. But I wanted to take a little bit more time and internalize everything and hear what other people had to say and everybody's arguments about the refs following the two games. But I wanted to focus specifically on the missed pass interference call at the end of the Rams-Saints game because, my God, was that one of the worst calls I've ever seen, or lack of a call I've ever seen. Of course, it's extremely controversial, and I've heard three main arguments regarding the missed call. I respect the first argument, although I don't agree with that argument. I respect it. I hate the second argument, and I agree with the third. And I'll start off with the first argument. Now, again, this is the one I respect, but I don't personally agree with. Now, basically, here's how it goes. The Saints, despite the missed call, still had three different opportunities to win the game, and therefore should have won the game. Now, the first opportunity was on their final offensive drive. Saints had 1st and 10 from the Rams' 13-yard line right after the 2-minute warning. Drew Brees hit Ted Ginn down the field for a long pass. Right, so 1st and 10 from the Rams' 13, first down, and the Saints decide to throw, and it goes incomplete. So the clock stops, Rams don't have to call a timeout, and they have their 2 timeouts remaining for the moment. Then they run on the next play, Rams call a timeout. So now it's about 3rd and 10, right? 3rd and 9, 3rd and 10. I forget exactly what it was. And the Saints decide to try to throw, and that's where Robey-Coleman commits pass interference, but it's not called. So now it's 4th down, minute 45 to go. Rams still have a timeout. Saints kick a field goal, and they give the Rams a minute and 40 seconds with a timeout to drive down the field, looking for a field goal to tie or a touchdown to win the game. And basically, if the Saints ran on either 1st or 3rd down, they would the Rams would have only had a minute and 40 seconds to drive down the field, but they wouldn't have had a timeout, and that would have been the key part of that one. However, if the Saints ran on both 1st and 3rd down, right? So they ran on 1st, 2nd, and 3rd, all three. The Rams would have only had around a minute to drive down the field and tie the game, and they wouldn't have had a timeout. So that, I think, is where this argument kind of bases itself. But there's more. So the second opportunity, of course, was stopping the Rams from going on the field and tying the game. But all the Rams had to do was go 45 yards with a minute and 40 seconds and a timeout, going for it on 4th down. And I think that was just going to be too difficult for that defense to stop. It's especially considering the emotional blow that they had just received after that missed penalty. I think it was going to be really, really difficult to stop the Rams there. And then the third opportunity, of course, was in overtime, where the Rams got the ball first, at home, touchdown to win the game, or at least a field goal that just put some pressure on Los Angeles. But instead, Drew Brees threw an interception, giving the Rams the opportunity for a game-winning drive, which they took advantage of, and are going to the Super Bowl. So overall, I respect this argument, but I personally don't agree with it for a couple reasons. First, yeah, I agree with the Saints throwing the ball on 3rd down. I'm fine with them throwing the ball on 3rd down. I like the aggressiveness there because if you pick that up, you win the game. And the refs missed pass interference. So it should have been 1st down. They should have clinched the game. Second main reason I don't like this argument. It basically disregards the fact that the refs missed one of the most obvious pass interference calls I've ever seen, at least in my lifetime of watching NFL football. You know, you can say, well, they had other opportunities to win. That doesn't disregard the fact they should have made the call. So, overall, I respect that argument because, yeah, the Saints still had some other opportunities to win. But, I think it disregards the refs missing that play. Now, the second argument, and this is going to be really quick, I don't agree with this one at all. I hate it. And the argument is basically that throughout the game, the Saints got some calls that benefited them. So, the missed pass interference call didn't really matter. Saints still should have won the game. What? What? So basically what this argument is saying is that this game, this Saints vs. Rams game, was no different from any NFL game. In every single game, there's questionable calls. There's borderline calls. And just about every single call, whether controversial or not, it benefits only one team. Right? A penalty is going to cost yardage for one team. The other team's going to gain yardage. I think it's pretty simple. But what makes this specific play, this Robey-Coleman play, different from every other play is it was just so obvious. It was so obviously pass interference. Nickel Robey-Coleman literally hit Saints receiver Tommy Lee Lewis in the helmet before the ball even got there. He didn't attempt to play the ball. He had his back to it. And he admitted after the game, yeah, that was pass interference. I was just trying to hit him so he didn't catch the ball. I mean, this was a play that was so obviously a penalty. Robey-Coleman was fined a couple days ago over $25,000 for the helmet-to-helmet contact. Right after the game, NFL officials apologized to Sean Payton and the Saints because they obviously missed the call. And if the penalty was called, the Saints would be headed to the Super Bowl. So again, long story short, this argument, it puts the missed pass interference in the same category as just about every other missed penalty in history. But in reality, it's in a category of its own. This is NFC Championship. This is Super Bowl, trip to the Super Bowl on the line. You have to make that call if you're the refs. Third argument, final argument, the one I agree with the most, that the refs blew the game and the Saints should be playing in Super Bowl 53. To me, it's fairly simple. And I've kind of mentioned it a couple times already. The referees failed to do their job. Every single person, whether playing in the game, whether it was a player or a coach, whether they're sitting in the stands at the stadium, or sitting in the press box, or watching on their television, every one of those people knew immediately that Nickel Robey-Coleman committed pass interference or helmet-to-helmet contact, whatever it was a penalty that should have caused a first down. The only people that didn't see the penalty somehow were the people ultimately responsible for calling the penalty, the refs. And I heard one of the refs, his explanation was he thought the ball was tipped. However, okay, fine. So it's not pass interference. It was still helmet-to-helmet contact. It was an obvious call right there. He was fined for it a couple of days ago. So that argument doesn't really hold up from the refs. But again, I think it's really simple. Could the Saints have won the game otherwise had the penalty not been called? Yeah, I mean they should have won the game still. Were there some missed calls or lack of missed calls in the game that benefited the Saints? Yeah, I'm sure there were a bunch of calls that benefited the Saints. But at the end of the day, did Nickel Robey-Coleman commit a penalty that should have sent New Orleans to the Super Bowl? Yeah, I mean 100%. So again, if the refs did their job, the Saints should have won the game, and they should be heading to Atlanta to play the Patriots in Super Bowl 53. Now, earlier this week, James Harden against the New York Knicks put up 61 points in a great performance. I think he had 49 points through 3 quarters. It was really, really great. I'm not going to lie, I wasn't impressed by the performance, and I have not really been impressed with James Harden all season long. Now don't get me wrong. James Harden's a great player. He's one of the best. He's one of the top 10 players in the NBA, but I'm just not impressed by these constant, amazing scoring outbursts. So I want to look specifically at this game, and then I'm going to look over the course of the year for James Harden. So in this game against the Knicks, he scored 61 points. Great. 17 of 38 from the field, good for 44.7%. Okay, that seems pretty good, right? It's all right. Not the best, but I mean, he took a lot of shots. But here we go. This is where it starts to get a little bad. So again, he shot 38 times from the field. 20 of those were from 3-point range. So more than half of his attempts were from 3. He only hit 5 of those. 25%. 5 for 20. So again, more than half the shots are coming from beyond the arc. But he was extremely inefficient. He did not capitalize on those attempts whatsoever. Also, he shot 25 free throws. Made 22 of them. 36% of his points, over a third of his points on the night, came from the charity stripe. That rubs me the wrong way a little bit. I don't know. He only had 4 assists. And, I will admit, in a lot of games this year, he's had a bunch of assists. Right? He's been a great passer for the most part this season. But in this game in particular, there were a bunch of plays where he had his head down. He knew he was going to shoot. and either took a bad shot or just missed a shot. When maybe there was a guy wide open that could have shot, he put his head down, tried to make a play with the ball, trying to score. He also turned the ball over 5 times. That's not very good. I mean, yeah, he handled the ball a lot, so I guess maybe that's all right considering how often he had the ball in his hands, but it's still not that great. And oh yeah, by the way, they only won by 4 against the second worst team in the league, in the New York Knicks. For most of the game, they were actually behind. They were behind for a good chunk of that game. So this specific performance I'm not that impressed by. Sure, he scored a bunch of points. That's great. Great. Sure, he rebounded a decent amount. Awesome. No passing. He turned it over. He was, for the most part, very inefficient. He shot 23 pointers. 23 pointers. Jeez. I just don't like that. Listen, I'm somebody that likes the 3-point ball. When I personally play basketball, I shoot a lot of threes. But when you take 20 in a single game and you've only made 5, at a certain point, can't you just realize you're having an off night and to try to drive a little bit more? And yeah, he drove to the basket a lot in the game, but could you do something a little bit more going to the basket if you're missing a lot of threes? All right, so now I'm gonna go into long-term, season-long stats, and I'm still not impressed with James Harden. Some of these stats are really great. I'm just not impressed. So he leads the league in free throw attempts with 538. That's 85 more than Joel Embiid, who's in second place. Also, he leads the league in made free throws, which is a real shock considering how many he's taken. He's made 467 free throws, 104 more than Joel Embiid, who's in second place. Now, yeah, he shoots a higher percentage than Embiid, but 104 more made free throws than the next player in the league. I think that says something about Harden and how many calls he gets. Now, he scores 36.2 points per game, 7 more than anyone else. That's great. Awesome. Part of that is due to the fact the Rockets have very few other scorers. But listen to this. Out of the 19 players below him in the top 20 points per game, only 3 players, Kemba Walker, Donovan Mitchell, and Russell Westbrook, shoot a lower percentage from the field than Harden's 43.8%. And those guys are known for being very inconsistent when it comes to shooting. Right? Everyone knows Russell Westbrook, he's not an amazing shooter. Now, he's shot a higher percentage in the past. He's having a down year when it comes to efficiency from the field. Donovan Mitchell, great rookie year last year. He's kind of, he's taking a step back this year maybe a little bit. He's not getting as much attention from the media. He's shooting a bad percent. He didn't even shoot a great percentage last year either. Kemba Walker, again, takes a lot of shots, misses a lot, makes a lot of amazing ones too. But again, out of the top 20 scorers, out of the 19 below Harden, 16 shoot a better percentage than James Harden. Just saying. Take it as you will, but just saying. So now, I also looked at the games in which James Harden has scored at least 40 points this year. So 40 or more points. 17 times. That's great. Amazing. Rockets are 13-4 in those games. Right, so it shows, okay, if he scores a bunch of points, the Rockets usually win. However, listen to a couple of these numbers from these types of games. So in these 17 games, 15 of these 17 games, he's shot over 10 free throws. That speaks a lot to how many calls he gets, how many times he's going to the free throw line. In 11 of these 17 games, he's shot at least 15 free throws. He has shot 50% from the field in only 5 of these 17 games. He has made at least half of his 3-point attempts. Only 3 out of these 17 40-point games. And in these games, he averages 6.7 turnovers per game. He's unbelievably inefficient. He takes the ball in isolation, tries to score almost every time. And sure, he does it more often. He shoots a higher percentage than most people do in isolation, I'm sure. But that's not the most efficient way to score. That's not the most efficient way to run an offense if you're Houston. I mean, think about it. This is James Harden. James Harden, inefficient, isolation scoring guard that heavily relies on getting to the free throw line to put up big scoring numbers. 29% of Harden's points over the course of the year have come from the free throw line. Almost a third of his points have come from the free throw line this year. I compared that to guys like Stephen Curry and Kyrie Irving. Stephen Curry, only about 15-16% of his points come from the free throw line. Kyrie Irving, only about 12-13%. And personally, this is just me. If I'm a general manager or if I'm a coach, I would much rather have my top scorer, my second highest scorer, be better shooting from the field. I'd rather have them get more points from the field than from the free throw line. James Harden relies on getting to the free throw line. Come playoff time, when there should be fewer fouls called, there are definitely some games where it's not the case. But in general, you get to the playoffs, refs let the guys play a little bit more. Not as many free throw attempts. How many points is he going to put up? How many times the Rockets going to win? I would bet you today, if the NBA playoffs started today, the Rockets would play the Trailblazers in the first round. I would take the Trailblazers in that series. In my preseason predictions, I didn't even have the Blazers making the playoffs, I don't think. I would have them beating the Rockets because they just rely way too heavily on James Harden, and James Harden relies way too much on getting to the free throw line. So overall, I'm just not impressed with what James Harden is doing. He's still a great player. Right now, I would put him second in the MVP race behind Giannis. He's an amazing player. He won MVP last year for a reason. I thought the year Russell Westbrook won, because he averaged a triple-double, Harden should have won that year. He was amazing that year. He's an amazing player. I really, really enjoyed watching him in the past. I don't enjoy watching him as much now. But I'm just not impressed by all these scoring outputs. He's not doing it the right way for me. He's just not. Thank you guys so much for tuning into this edition of Courtside. Join me next time, where I'll give my Super Bowl predictions. And as usual, remember to subscribe to the podcast wherever you may be listening, and follow the podcast on Twitter. Link will be in the description. Signing off, this is Andrew Cohen. I will see you next time.